We're talking to Dr. William Hardy from Tennessee State University. And of course, Dr. Hardy, let's give you an opportunity now to sort of introduce the program that has won applause all over the nation in reference to what you're talking about and how you think that this system can be revised and some of the motives and some of the opposition perhaps to this kind of revision.
I think we might want to start, Dr. Haney, with the fact that the city of Oakland, California was probably a beginning point of you know, when we want to look at this. 1993, 1994, 1995, the school board in Oakland, California became controlled 100% by African Americans. And once that happened, that meant then that they could then design the types of programs that they felt would move their young people from speaking home-based language to standard English. And the program that we all know in America became Ebonics. But it was highly misunderstood. Now, those of us who were in the 1960s and the 70s civil rights movement knew that once we had removed the obvious barriers of segregation and the problems of hate and ignorance, once those barriers were moved, we knew that it would be another phase that would be quite complicated. Ebonics was one of those examples. It was complicated. What we were really saying in the early 1990s in the Oakland Unified School District was that a number of African American kids still have a home-based language. And when they get to the elementary school, from K through 12, when they get there, they are not they do not have the same language, or they don't have the same number of words in their vocabulary as their white counterparts. And in fact, the statistics have shown from the Department of Education that a white child entering the public school system has over 6 to 7 to 8 to 10,000 words in his vocabulary, while the black child only has 2 to 3,000 words in his or her vocabulary.
And of course, we've always talked about Head Start. That's the purpose, Head
Start was a good example, and other people have talked about these types of initiatives to try and get at the basic program, which is good. We needed to do that. But because of politics in this in America, and because of the resistance to looking at a colorblind society, we've had so much resistance. So whenever one administration in Washington comes in, and 4 to 8 years will go by, that initiative will then be dismantled, and a new one will be introduced. And now at present, we have the No Child Left Behind program. It's a horrible program. It has not then really, our children are still being left behind in inner cities. So why not we look then at the church, the black church particularly, going back to the days when the black church actually had created schools. You remember now, during the days of, at the end of slavery, from 1865 all the way to 1897, before the Plessy versus Ferguson case, individuals controlled black schools.
Especially your denomination and several others.
Certainly, yes. The African Methodist Episcopal Church was certainly one of those, and the school that I attended. I attended Central State, but Central State was the combined normal and industrial school of Wilberforce University, the first African American controlled university in the history of the United States, 1856. Later on we said there was also Fisk. That was the second school. And so, and there were a number of them. Well, the individuals who graduated from those institutions are the individuals who led the civil rights movements in the 1960s.
That's right.
So those were the individuals who actually had received a superior education. We could compete with white America toe to toe. Then those programs were dismantled because of the theory of integration. Now, integration wasn't bad, but there was so much white resistance to integration, we never saw the real thing. If we did, Why don't we have parity today? Why is it that you and I see students at Tennessee State University that not always are there, and that's why some of them will have to then look at remedial programs. Now, thank God it's not a whole number. It's not, the numbers are getting smaller now. Yes, because recognize that. Yes, it is important. They are not now remedial, as a lot of people in this community and others will say, black schools are remedial. That's not so. We are looking at an outstanding number of young people who are coming to Tennessee State University and now are going on to a number of graduate schools and professional schools. Of course they have. But the resistance in the middle school and the elementary schools and the high schools in America are still now beginning to change again into a segregated system. And so I would then propose that we look at then the old days of the black church coming back into the system. We now have a number of mega churches. You know, here in Nashville we have Joseph Walker, the Bishop Joseph Walker, and his church, Mount Zion Baptist Church, has 18,000 members. Why not his church also have a school? And that would go from K through 12, and begin to look at how you refashion. Black people in America have never said that we would have a quota system that white people could not come. So if we have a superior education program that is developed, let's say, and I'll just use Mount Zion as the place, if that school is developed there and it's a superior school, you can believe white people will want to go to that school as well, and they will be welcome.
And that's how schools grow.
Exactly, that's exactly right. And that's how we develop then a colorblind America. So this initiative will begin to look at black people controlling their own destiny, and that scares white people quite a bit, because all of a sudden now they're not in charge of the money that you're paying the school teachers and the administrators, because now they'll be controlled by a black system and a white system and a Hispanic system. Now, some people will argue, oh, that's resegregation. Well, we already have resegregation anyway. Most of our schools are naturally segregated because of the housing patterns in America. If you can't afford to move to Bellevue or Brentwood, then your children are not going to go to an integrated school.
Now, has that always been the major problem in terms of integration housing? I think that part of the NAACP thing has always been in reference. Certainly. If you can't create a situation where you've got an integrated neighborhood, that's right, then it's going to be almost impossible to have an integrated school.
Exactly right. If you've got what my proposal is, and the paper that I'll be giving at Oxford this summer, will be that we ought to look at the facts and reality. And the reality is the school systems are already segregated. So why not then look at how are we shutting out parents? Black parents do not go to PTA meetings because they are working. But if we had black people in charge of the system who understood the working patterns and the living patterns and the cultural situations of the black community, the same of the Hispanic community, then let whites then come along, because those who don't want to be integrated, don't want to be a part of the colorblind society, they have the Christian schools anyway. So let them stay at the Christian schools. But we will develop superior education in those new types of schools that are controlled by people who understand the people in that neighborhood. So we're talking about neighborhood school system. And when you talk about
where the neighborhood is, that's where the school, the individuals involved.
Now let me look at one other problem there. When we're looking at the problems right now of over 60 to 70% of the prisons in the United States of America have 60 to 70% black males incarcerated. How can that be logically if the black community is only 12% of the population of the United States? There are 350 million people in the United States and only 40 million black folk. Now, how in the world would we then be 60 to 70, 80% of the prison industrial complex? Something's wrong with that. Which means then we ought to address that. Well, that might mean that we ought to have one school that will be tailor-made for only black boys in that school system that's tailor-made for that neighborhood. But where black boys then will be able to realize who they are, be able to develop then the manhood program, so we might call it rites of passage, as opposed to trying to compete with a white boy that he seems to feel still like the doll test that was in the 1930s and the 1940s. He's still then seeing that. Something's wrong with that system. We need to revise it.
And of course, Dr. Hardy, you're going to have an opportunity to go beyond where we are today by going to England this summer and delivering this speech. And of course, it's at the Oxford Round Table, I understand.
Yes, sir.
Over the
yes,
last
sir.
30 seconds, why don't you say something in reference to that organization?
Oxford, as you know, in my career, your career, if someone has invited you to Oxford to give a paper, I think it's probably the capstone of your career. And I'm certainly honored to have been invited, and I accepted it immediately, and it's a joy to have been invited. It's an honor to have been invited and to present my views to the people of the Round
And of course,
Table.
these views will be disseminated widely. I mean,
Yes.
this is nothing that is done in a corner.
40 individuals will come from all around the world who will be there for that
Very
particular
good.
week.
And of course, let me encourage our audience, Dr. Hardy, to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.